Aloha, and how's it? Today we're talking all about what your LinkedIn social selling index, mouthful, score is and why it matters, even if you're not a salesperson. So, more on that in a minute. How was your weekend? If you're based in the US, you might have celebrated Mother's Day, whether you're a mom, whether you have a mom in your life, whether there are other moms that you spent the time with. I hope you had a beautiful time with your family. My kids gave me this hilarious card. Like, we have this running joke in our family that whenever there's a celebration, we always get like a random card. So if it's a birthday, we'll get like a graduation card. If it's your 36th birthday, which is my next one, by the way, that would actually be like, we'd get a birthday card that said happy 90th birthday, something completely random. So they got me a silly card, and then they got me this really neat crystal. So it looks like a starfish, and it's actually like a rose quartz. So I'm a little bit woo woo when it comes to crystals, and I found that super, super sweet. And then I got in a bit of time on the waves to practice on my new surfboard. So I call that a win. Hopefully, you had a great weekend as well. And if you haven't checked out my podcast yet, the Mango Effect podcast, you'll get to hear me talk about the story behind why we actually moved to Hawaii a few years ago. So, what it means to thoughtfully choose where you want to live, pros and cons of living on an island, how we can create an ideal environment for ourselves, no matter where we call home. So it's a really interesting topic. If you're curious about how do you choose an environment, why does environment matter, really a lot on that topic of conversation because there's so much that goes into where we live and why we live where we live. So there are also a dozen, I think more than a dozen other episodes up there already for if you want to listen and hear about all things lifestyle design, entrepreneurship, living in Hawaii, and non traditional relationships. So, super fun stuff. But now it is time for Mondays with Mindy. This is a weekly show on Monday afternoons if you're based in the US, where I talk about all things LinkedIn pipeline, promo, and profiles, what I like to call the three P's of LinkedIn. So, do you have questions about LinkedIn that you want me to answer? Be sure to like this post, whether you're watching live or from the replay. Leave your questions below, and I will answer them after the show or on a future episode of Mondays with Mindy. So, completely up to you. But I love getting ideas and I like diving into topics related to LinkedIn, social selling, growing our businesses, building our personal brands. So if there's a topic that you want me to cover in a future episode, this is actually where I get the ideas. And this entire month is coming from ideas that were suggested by listeners. All right, so let's get to today's topic. What's the big deal with your social selling index? So hard to say, aka your SSI score. If I'm not a salesperson, does it even matter? So, what is the LinkedIn SSI score? If you've been on LinkedIn for any length of time, you may have heard some chatter about your social selling index score, and I'm going to refer to it as SSI moving forward. The problem is that many people do not even know that this exists, what it is, or how to use it, what it stands for, and how to know if they're actually improving on LinkedIn. So, what good is a score if you have no idea how to improve it? You have the choice to ignore it, but then you're really missing out on a valuable snapshot of your LinkedIn activity. So, for the naysayers of SSI scores, you may have heard things like SSI scores are useless, they're just a vanity metric. Or maybe, wait, there's a score that measures how well I'm doing on LinkedIn? Please tell me about this. I didn't know there was something. Or maybe you barely spend any time on LinkedIn. So, why does your SSI score even matter? Is the SSI score the best way to track your LinkedIn activity and your effect? The SSI score is not at all accurate. I've noticed that when I feel like I'm doing well, my score doesn't show it. So I've heard a lot of trepidation, I think, around the SSI score. Is it really valuable? Like, how can I use it? Mindy, please just kind of clear this up for me. So, today we're going to get to the bottom of the SSI score. It is basically this real time snapshot that is coming directly from LinkedIn. And I feel like even if you don't put a lot of stock in it, it's something to at least be aware of and pay attention to if it makes sense for your objectives. All right, so aloha for those who don't know me. My name is Mindy Rosser. I'm the founder of Mindy Rosser Marketing, and I have a program called the LinkedIn Accelerator for those who want to go from 0 to 60 on LinkedIn with their profile and their network. And we just wrapped up the spring cohort, but you can get on the July waitlist, which is when we are opening the next cohort of the LinkedIn Accelerator. I will share the link at the end of this live so you can check it out. I help superstars who feel they are the best kept secret in their industry to become that go to visible expert in their niche so they can get that next opportunity, grow their business, and scale their impact. And in this live, we are going to talk about why ignoring your SSI score is costing you new business relationships, and how you can actually use your SSI score to improve your return on investment on LinkedIn. Because why are we spending time on LinkedIn if there is no return on our investment? We don't want to waste time here. So we want to really pay attention to what is working on LinkedIn and make adjustments accordingly. And we have to know what is helping us reach our objectives. So our SSI score can give us a lot of clues as to what's working. So go ahead and like this post, whether you're live or watching from the replay, to give it some social love. So if you're anything like me, you may feel a little bit skeptical when LinkedIn releases a new feature or tells you something about your LinkedIn profile and how it's performing. Like, okay, what's the real reason you're telling me this, LinkedIn? So I actually track my own metrics. So my metrics from my LinkedIn profile, not just my page metrics. And I use a tool called Shield App. So just like you would think of Shield App, shieldapp.ai. I also have my own spreadsheets for the good old fashioned tracking. And I watch very particular and highly classified metrics to tell when my programs are working and when they're not. So I get it. Not everyone is as nerdy as I am when it comes to tracking their LinkedIn ROI. How nerdy are you? Do you like to pour over spreadsheets and analytics dashboards? Maybe, maybe not. So most people I have found are not that nerdy when it comes to the numbers. Now there are some outliers. I have heard from many of you, like, Mindy, your spreadsheets are not nerdy enough for me. So many of us want a snapshot though. We are thinking about how can we tell if our LinkedIn profile is working? What is a simple way that I can measure this? I really don't want to go too deep. So over the past couple of weeks, I've actually been giving a number of presentations around LinkedIn profile optimization to highly accomplished corporate professionals. And I had that aha moment when I was discussing which metrics mattered most when they were looking to polish up their LinkedIn profile and start using LinkedIn effectively. Someone actually asked about the SSI score. Was that a metric to pay attention to? I paused, like, actually, it is a really good score from the perspective of LinkedIn profile optimization. Why? Because many of these execs are never going to dig into one of my nerdy spreadsheets. They're probably not going to sign up for that really cool, nifty tool called shieldapp.ai. I'll put the link at the end if you're curious. But they want to have an idea of what is working. And they want an easy way where they can just visually look at their metrics and say, okay, I'm kind of on track, or maybe I do need to get some support and go deeper because my metrics really seem to be out of balance. I'm not doing as well as I thought. So this really got me thinking about the SSI score from a new perspective. I realized many people are not going to dig into my spreadsheets or have a monthly debrief with me about how many one-to-one conversations they have had with their ideal prospects based on our outreach and marketing efforts. So what is a simple way to get some feedback in real time? What do we actually have time to do? Even if we don't get super nerdy, even if we're not using LinkedIn from a sales and marketing prospecting perspective, what can we do in 60 seconds every so often just to see how we're doing? And that's when it hit for me. The SSI score is really, really valuable for the everyday LinkedIn user. It's not just a vanity metric. So if you want to go deeper, realize that you can. Like, if you are looking at the SSI score when I start sharing my screen in a little bit, and you say, Mindy, that's not enough data for me. That is kind of hinting at what I'm doing, but it's not really giving me the full picture. Okay, then you probably do want something that has more depth to it and you want to track different numbers. But for the rest of us, it gives a general idea of how you're doing on LinkedIn. Plus, you get like a little hit of dopamine by checking your score. You're like, I'm doing pretty well. I'm doing better than I thought I was doing. So if you're not going deep with your LinkedIn sales and marketing program, uh, I can help you if you want to get that nerdy. But the SSI score is something you should definitely check. I would say every month, every quarter, if you are thinking, okay, I just want to kind of keep tabs on LinkedIn, how I'm doing. So if you notice that it's not going up or it's not maintaining over time, then it is time to go deeper. You may need to, for a short period, track some other metrics to see what's working. All right, so it is time to bring up your score. If you're watching the replay or here with me live, I want you to type this into your browser. So it's https, okay, blah, 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 www.linkedin.com/sales/SSI. Okay, so just think linkedin.com/sales/SSI. I will put the link in the show notes so you can look it up later, but I'm going to show you mine now. So you should be able to see it. Here we go. Put myself to the side here, and I'm actually gonna make myself a little smaller. That works. All right, so this is what it looks like when you type that into your browser. It is really, really helpful to look at this, as I said, every month. I like to put a reminder in my task manager to actually give this a look because otherwise I forget. So we're going to talk through what each of the sections of the SSI score are and what they mean. So if you're looking at my screen here, you're going to see that in the top left corner, it says Team SSI Rank. So what does that actually mean? This is only visible to those of you with a Sales Navigator account. So if you do not have a paid Sales Navigator account, you probably won't see this here. You won't see this here. It is useful for those of you who do have a Sales Navigator team subscription. So this means that you have multiple salespeople, typically salespeople, that are connected through a team account. So if you have a number of people at your company that all have Sales Navigator, you're going to see how you rank compared to those people on your sales team. Okay. So it's kind of a fun little metric if you are trying to gamify the approach with your internal team. So it's not really relevant to most of us, especially if you have a solo sales navigator account, and you won't even see it if you have a free account. Okay. So next to that in the middle, the top 1% industry SSI rank. This is exactly what it appears to be. So how do you rank against people in your industry? LinkedIn looks at the industry that you've marked on your LinkedIn profile, and it kind of uses its fancy algorithm to determine where you stand in the industry. So if you are in the top 1 to 5% for your industry, you're doing pretty well. So do not stress. If you are below that, that's okay. That's okay. There's room for improvement, but top 1 to 5% for your industry is excellent. So to improve the score, you'll actually need to focus on the weakest components of your score, which we will talk through very shortly. But this is just kind of a fun metric to see where you rank. Now we're looking next at the network SSI rank. So you'll see on mine, it says top 1%. This is the ranking you have against all of the people inside your LinkedIn network. So you're thinking about those first degree connections, people you've either accepted a connection request from or invited to join your network. If you have a network filled with what I call LinkedIn power users, your score may be not as high as your industry average, is your industry rank. So just keep that in mind. I feel like if you're in the top 1 to 3% for your network, you're doing very, very well. To improve the score, you can either up your game on LinkedIn or you can also start disconnecting with the LinkedIn power users and start connecting with new LinkedIn users. Sarcasm intended here. I probably don't recommend disconnecting with anyone unless they're just not a good fit for your network. All right, so let's jump down to what I feel like is the most important part of the social selling index, where it says current social selling index right in the middle. That's like the heart of this score. So, what are the four components of your score here? And we're going to talk through what each of them means and how you can improve them. Okay, so first we have the establish your professional brand. So LinkedIn is encouraging you to create an engaging LinkedIn profile, which is the cornerstone of your LinkedIn presence. And if you've heard me talk on any other lives, you probably heard me talk about the importance of your profile. Everything on LinkedIn starts with your profile. So it is critical that you have a very, very good profile. So you'll see on my score here that mine is 25. So basically, LinkedIn thinks you have done an excellent job with your LinkedIn profile. So if you're looking for a metric to see how well and how complete your profile is, that top metric is going to give you that number. You also need to be thinking about regularly sharing posts to LinkedIn. I typically recommend starting with one post per week. If you've never shared anything before, that tends to do quite well and also contributes to getting the professional brand and establishing it. All right, so below that, we have finding the right people. So, LinkedIn is a social networking platform, and they really want to encourage you to regularly connect with people for business purposes. So, when you are regularly searching for people, you're inviting people to connect, you're also accepting other good connections in your network. This makes LinkedIn's algorithm happy. And even if you're not using LinkedIn specifically for sales, it's a really good best practice to always be growing your network. You never know where opportunities are going to come from. So, finding the right people is very, very important. Another thing to note here is that if you do send a lot of LinkedIn connection invitations and people are not accepting your connection invitation, this score can actually go down. So, keep that in mind if you are one of those. I would say power users when it comes to sending out LinkedIn connection invitations. If you're on a mission to grow your network, pay attention to this number because if this number starts to kind of go down a little bit, you need to check your connection acceptance rate just to see how many people are accepting the connections that you're sending and how many people are not. All right? So that's something to pay attention to if you're curious like how can I tinker with this score? All right. So the next one you're going to see is engaging with insights. So what does this mean? You're actually doing that right now by watching this live stream, especially if you're watching on LinkedIn. When you watch live videos, when you engage with other people's posts, when you leave comments, when you mention people in the LinkedIn newsfeed, LinkedIn notices. So the more that you engage, the more highly you're going to score on this component. I'd recommend, like, if you're like, Mindy, well, give me an idea of how much I need to be engaging with other people's content. I'd recommend looking to comment on one or two posts per weekday to feed the algorithm. So if you're doing that, this score is going to look pretty healthy. You'll notice on mine, this has actually gone down. If you look at an older snapshot of my SSI score, this was actually like 16. So it has gone down. I have spent less time in my newsfeed engaging with people's content. So this is the weakest area of my score. It is definitely where I could stand to improve if that mattered to me. And I said, I probably should be engaging in those two-way conversations. This is an area where I could definitely improve. Okay. So let's move on to the building relationships. So this one, it seems to be kind of a blend of the first two components at first glance, but really it's an amalgamation of how you're building relationships on LinkedIn. So if you are messaging people who are credible in the industry, you're getting into those two-way conversations, you're getting into dialogue with other experts, you're active in your DMs, and you're using the platform to nurture your business relationships. LinkedIn scores you pretty highly for this one. So you can see mine is pretty strong. If I had to judge where I spent the most time, I definitely do spend a lot of time updating my profile. It's kind of what I do. So I always feel that my profile needs to be fresh and updated. You'll also notice my score is a 25 on both. So I am also a 25 in building relationships. I do value my relationships with my network. So if I'm going to spend time on LinkedIn, if I have a limited amount of time, I'm going to spend it in my DMs. I'm going to respond to everybody that has messaged me. And sometimes I get behind. Sometimes there are a lot of conversations that I just am not keeping up with, but I really make an effort to do my best and spend my priority time on LinkedIn inside my DMs and going back and forth with people in my network. So these are the two components that matter the most to me. Yes, I want to find the right people, but I am not trying to grow my network as quickly as possible. That is not the most important thing to me. For me, I really want to deepen, like my focus for this year is to deepen my relationships with my existing connections. So for me, as long as I'm looking at my score and I'm seeing that, okay, I'm building relationships, I should probably engage with more insights because that does contribute to deepening those relationships. But I'm doing okay. So I would be pretty happy with this score and the components and where my time is going and what I'm seeing reflected back to me in this score. So basically, you see that when you put all of these components together, you get your score and it's on a scale of 1 to 100. Mine right now is 84. So I haven't seen many people stay above 90 on this score for long periods of time. But I do tend to see that my best performers, a number of my clients kind of hover in the 80s. So the 80s is a really good range. If you're in this range, you're close to it. Just realize you're doing a really great job on LinkedIn. All right, so let's talk about the last few metrics at the bottom of the page. So, people in your team. All right, again, this is only relevant if you are on a Sales Navigator team subscription and you want to see what your teammates' SSI scores are. So that can be really, really fun if you do have a sales team or you have multiple people at your company with Sales Navigator subscriptions and you want to incentivize them. This can be fun, especially if they're a little bit competitive. But for most of us, that is irrelevant. All right, so people in your industry, for those who like to play comparisons, you can actually see the average score of people that are in your industry. LinkedIn pulls the industry and kind of averages scores of people in that industry and then tells you what they tend to have. So you'll see it's pulling broadcast media, and that's because I just started a podcast. So now it's comparing me to people that are in broadcast media when before it was marketing and advertising. So it's interesting. So pay attention to the industry that it's pulling because you want to make sure that that is relevant to you. So according to the other people that are in broadcast media, my score is incredibly high. So I'm definitely in the top 1% there, but most people have a score of 23. Now, moving on to the people in your network. So, this is kind of fun too. If you're curious what the average scores of people in your network are, this number is helpful to know how you measure against connections in your network. Now, you're thinking, Mindy, why does this even matter? It's a very helpful measure if you are curious, like you're thinking, I'm not sure if I'm active enough. What do people in my network tend to do? How active are they actually? This number can give you insight into where you fall on the spectrum with people in your network. So, most of the people in my network, and I have some people that are incredibly engaged, like they probably would score in the 90s because they are engaging with insights all the time. They're identifying and building their networks at super speed. So, I'm kind of surprised that people in my network are at 48. I would imagine that would probably be a little higher. So, what does that tell me? If my score is 84 and most people are 48, that means I'm incredibly active compared to most people in my network. So, if I was actually lower than people in my network, I might look at that score and say, huh, I probably should up my game a little bit. Let me look at those four components of the current social selling index, those four components of my score, and see where I could, do a little bit more here. So, this is a very helpful way to know where you fall in how you compare to other people in your network. Are you too active? Are you very active? And maybe you need to think, okay, I'm doing pretty well. I don't need to ramp it up and start posting 50 times a day. Please do not post 50 times a day. Multiple times per day is a lot on LinkedIn. You want to focus on once a day. But just think about how you are doing in comparison to your network. If you feel like you're doing really well, you could probably actually relax a little bit on LinkedIn. Take a breather. More on LinkedIn is not necessarily better. Better is better, quality over quantity. All right. So there you have it. We covered a lot when it comes to our scores. So I highly recommend you check yours out. Just give it a look. All of the elements to your social selling index are there and they are accessible to everyone. You do not have to have a paid account. You do not have to have a sales navigator account. If you do have a sales navigator account, you will see those couple extra things related to sales navigator team. If you do not, you will not see those, but it's not a big deal. Those don't really matter for most of us. What each of those numbers means is very unique to you, and you can adjust based on what you see there. You can make snap judgments when you're looking for a quick gauge, and it doesn't require in depth analysis as long as you understand the basics. I feel like SSI scores can be a valuable tool for those who want to use LinkedIn well, but maybe they're not looking to embark on a serious sales and marketing initiative where the numbers have to tie to some ROI and you really need to get nitty gritty with your numbers. So, if you do want to go deeper with your marketing analytics, I do recommend an affordable tool. It's called Shield. So, SHIELD, shieldapp.ai. That will help you get the LinkedIn metrics for your LinkedIn profile that go far beyond the social selling index. And I'm not getting a kickback for shouting them out. It's just a tool that I've used for years for myself, for my clients who really want to keep their finger on the marketing pulse of what's working and not on LinkedIn from their LinkedIn posts. I'll put the link in the comments, so don't worry. All right. So, any questions that you have about the social selling index, anything else you want to know, leave your questions and comments below. And if you are looking for that extra edge to get started on the right path with your profile, then get on the wait list for the LinkedIn Accelerator. Its next one is happening in July, and this will help you dial in the most important sections of your LinkedIn profile to kickstart your SSI score. All right, I will see all of you next week on Mondays with Mindy. Feel free to leave any questions or comments below, and my inbox is open if you want to message me directly. I will talk with you soon. Bye for now. Have a good week.